tough for me. I did an interview last night, and the reporter said, something's wrong, your tone has changed. He said, are you tired? Or is something bothering you? And I said, my heart is heavy. Because last night I met some members of Michael Brown's family. One of the gentlemen is sitting here. There was a young lady and another young gentleman. And they brought tears to my eyes. They brought tears to my eyes. And shame to my heart.
Tears to his eyes, shame to his heart. And he went on to say that he was sorry. Not out of sympathy kind of sorry, but sorry. Which made it sound to me like he was apologizing for the actions of his fellow officer. Welcome back, Malzberg panel time. And joining us in studio, I'm happy to say, Kevin Jackson, radio talk show host, and I know author of The Big Black Lie, but he's got a brand new book coming out. We're very excited about that. We'll talk about that a little later. And founder of Less Government, Seton Motley. And gentlemen, first let me give you the latest. We now have from the Washington Post, we have not only the coroner's, not the coroner's report, but the autopsy results from Michael Brown's autopsy reports that was commissioned by the family. But we also have a report with someone familiar with the case, the report from the case's office released to the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office Friday night. It's not been made public. The report's part of the county's official investigation into the shooting. And the results say that, of course, Michael Brown was shot from the front and had marijuana in his system. Let me ask you, Kevin, any surprise when the eyewitnesses said that he was shot in the back and he was surrendering?
You mean the gentle giant who was on his way to college had marijuana? Yeah. No surprises. In fact, I'm curious as to what else the toxicology report will talk about, because we've now got these new allegations that he was able to take quite a few bullet hits. So no surprise there, and I don't think it's going to be a surprise for people as things start to leak out more and more that he wasn't the choir boy that everybody tried to make him out to be.
And Seton, Jesse Jackson, who we just had on, said under no circumstances, there are no circumstances that would justify that police officer shooting Michael Brown. Is that not insane?
Didn't we have that similar statement made, maybe not by Jesse Jackson, about Trayvon Martin? And then it turned out that George Zimmerman's head was beaten profoundly, and the pictures finally came out that he'd been beaten about the head and shoulders pretty dramatically prior to shooting Trayvon Martin. Look, this is absurd. I'm just waiting for the 9-year-old pictures of Michael Brown to come out like we saw with Trayvon Martin incessantly. Clearly, the guy robbed a store or got into some altercation at a store prior to that.
Wait a minute. Seton, Al Sharpton was in a church yesterday in Ferguson, and he said, let's be clear, this wasn't robbery, this was shoplifting. I just want to make that clear to you, Seton.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. Apparently Al Sharpton is, in addition to being a reverend. That may be a legal distinction that exists in Missouri. I'm not sure. But
I don't think so. I think it was strong-arm robbery is what the cops are calling it. But okay. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Either way, as Mr. Jackson rightly points out, you don't do something like that on the way to church. So whatever the distinction is, legal or otherwise, he didn't seem to be a upstanding, fine citizen. I would argue that going forward, we're constantly accused on the right of getting too far out on a limb with one person or the other. The Wyoming rancher who had 50 gendarmes show up because he was illegally ranching or grazing cattle. The left seems to get out on a limb an awful lot in advance of things. Trayvon Martin, Duke rape case, Tawana Brawley, et cetera, they're not asked to preemptively hold themselves onto the trunk of the tree.
Right. And go ahead, Kevin.
Well, the biggest problem is that what Sharpton and those guys want to do is they wanted to set a narrative, and they wanted that narrative to be so tight that to argue against that narrative in any way, to say that if you said anything against Michael Brown, you were desecrating on his grave before he was even in it, to say anything negative was to essentially justify his shooting. And that's ridiculous. You know, look, there are two sides to this other story. They made it was about the cops. It was not about the cops. It was about a single individual cop who was being demonized and had no ability to protect himself, because the way the left was setting it up was if he said anything in his defense, he was a racist or he was a black agenda, I'm going to kill black people cop. And that's just ridiculous. And if we allow that to happen on the right, shame on us.
And by the way, congratulations, Kevin, who was on with Poppy Harlow, I believe, on CNN over the weekend. I think she was on like 48 hours straight. Anyway, I thought she was going to pass out with a conservative black man sitting next to her saying what you were saying. You were wonderful and did a great job, and were a great balance on that station, that network, which needs great balance. But let me, something else Jesse Jackson said, and Kevin, we were talking in the newsroom before about the fact that I said, you keep bringing up, and he kept bringing it up, not enough black firemen in that town, not enough black policemen in that town. And I said, well, do you know the number of people who have applied, blacks who have applied to try to be cops and firemen? He said, no. I said, well, then with all due respect, what do the numbers mean that there aren't enough? Maybe they didn't want to apply, and you had a theory.
Well, Jesse Jackson's fallback position is, you know, if you have enough black people involved, things are going to be good. Well, I would ask you, go look at D.C., you know, go look at any place where black people are involved running these cities. They run them into the ground. You've got Ron Johnson, who was put in charge of this thing. It got worse. But to answer the question specifically, a couple of things. One, there were black police officers on the Ferguson police force who left. They leave after a few months because they're tired of it. So that's the first point. The second point is you're not going to solve problems by just colorizing it. You know, making it about, you know, hey, let's meet a quota. The same thing he's trying to do with the Silicon Valley companies, you know, Twitter and Google and so on. That's the left's response is, let's put black people in charge. Black people are in charge. Barack Obama and
Eric Holder.
Eric Holder.
Seton, we'll come back. We'll start with you when we come back, part 2 of the Malzberg panel. If you want to contact us on social media, here's how you do it as you stay tuned for your News Max Now update. Don't you go away.